All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to get into something that's a real headache for IT teams, especially those working on the factory floor. A mandatory, super complex, and, potentially really expensive VMware upgrade.
You know the saying, right? It's pretty much the golden rule for any team that's obsessed with uptime. And on a manufacturing shop floor, where literally every second of downtime costs real money, stability isn't just a nice to have, it's everything.
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's the heart of the problem we're seeing right now. Broadcom's new licensing is basically forcing everyone over to VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF, and it doesn't really matter if it fits what you need or not. So let's break down what this actually means, and way more importantly, what you can do about it.
So this upgrade puts you in a really tough spot. You're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You either have to go all in on this massive private cloud stack that you probably don't even need, or you risk letting your perfectly stable current setup just become a dead end.
Look, if your entire job is to keep those legacy apps and those absolutely critical SCADA systems humming along 24/7, you can see the massive disconnect here. The vendor's grand vision for a private cloud just doesn't line up with the reality on the ground.
Okay, so this brings us to what's really the heart of the pain here. It's just a total mismatch between the tool they're giving you and the job that actually needs to get done.
I mean, it kind of feels like being forced to use a spaceship to fix a bicycle. VCF is an incredibly powerful platform, no doubt about it, but it's built for a world that most manufacturing IT teams just don't live in. They need that reliable, simple bicycle, not a warp drive.
And this comment, which we've been seeing all over from the community, just hits the nail on the head. This isn't about people rejecting new technology, it's about asking for the right tool for the job.
All right, so that's the problem. But what's the solution? How do you actually survive this mandate without doing a complete, and let's be honest, unnecessary overhaul of your whole infrastructure? Let's get into the practical strategies.
Okay, so here it is, the question everyone is asking. Is there a way to stay compliant, to check the box, without actually deploying the entire monstrous VCF stack?
And the short answer is yes, absolutely. There is a path forward, and it's not just some theory. The community is already out there, figuring out the practical steps to make this work. The way to think about it is like this. You buy the whole Swiss Army knife, right? You have to stay compliant. But you really only ever use the main blade and maybe the screwdriver. You don't have to open up all the other gadgets you're never going to use.
Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room. NSX. This is the part that gives most admins nightmares. The biggest fear out there is being forced to completely tear down and rebuild your stable, reliable network just to make this thing happy.
Well, here's the good news. All those fears you might have about jumbo frames, new network topologies, VXLAN tunnels, you can pretty much just push those aside. There's a much simpler way forward. And this little nugget of information right here is an absolute game changer. What it means is you can be technically compliant with the VCF networking stuff without tearing apart the very network that keeps your factory online.
Now this next one, look, it's not pretty, it's not elegant, but it works. It's a totally legal and practical way to satisfy the license. You install the software, it sits there on the virtual shelf collecting dust, and you get on with your day without ever touching it.
And for those of you with a bunch of different smaller sites, like factories or remote offices, this next one might just be your secret weapon. It's a way to avoid deploying that full heavy stack in every single location.
This approach is actually pretty smart. You're basically centralizing all the complicated stuff at your main data center. Then, out at the actual factory sites, you run these lean, minimal clusters. It lets you check the compliance box without all the overhead everywhere.
So, okay, these are great workarounds, and they absolutely work. But let's be real, there's always a catch, right? We need to be clear-eyed about the trade-offs.
So what is the catch? Well, even when you go minimal, it's not exactly free. And the costs, well, they're not just on the invoice.
And this is where it kind of stings. You've got new hardware you need to buy just for the management stuff. You've got the time your team has to spend setting it all up. And worst of all, you're paying a premium for software licenses that you are intentionally not even using.
Yep, this user just sums it up perfectly. You're complying, sure, but you're doing it by turning most of the product into shelfware and just paying bigger bills for the privilege.
So to wrap it all up, what are people actually doing right now? Here's the playbook. The key takeaway is that you have options. These are the main pragmatic strategies IT teams are using to get through this and keep their factories running.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about having the coolest, flashiest tech. It's about one thing and one thing only, making sure the line doesn't stop. The goal is to run what you need, ignore what you don't, and find solutions that fit your reality, not the one on a vendor's slide deck.
And that's really the mission here, to empower your team to make the best, most practical decision to keep the lights on without losing your minds in all the complexity. Remember, fight the stack, not your sanity.